Hi, this is Ken and Michelle Bass.
And you're listening to the Resilient Parenting Podcast.
Well, here we go with yet another episode. Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks for joining.
I couldn't help it. I was here with you. And it just
I
started.
feel like I just saw you in the kitchen.
Yeah. and the living room. And look, in your office, too.
That's because you follow me.
True, because I know you always like to read, and I love a good book just as much as you do.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
I have some book titles to share with you
Oh.
that you may have never heard of before, but these are things to look for once you go online looking
All
for
right.
them, okay?
Call me intrigued.
Okay. How to Choose a Steak. Sounds intriguing, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. Sounds yummy.
The author is Porter House.
That sounded like a pig. Just then, I don't know.
Yeah. Mountain Climbing Techniques by End Over Hand. Here's one because you love mysteries and scary stories.
Oh, I do.
Ghost in the Closet
Ooh.
by Emma Frade.
I'm afraid.
Yeah. Stop Arguing.
Stop arguing.
One of those
Mom and
self-help
Dad are
books.
okay.
Stop
Okay.
Arguing.
Okay.
It's by Xavier Breath.
Save your breath.
And this book here, it could be an autobiography. I don't know. It's by one of my favorite singers of all time.
Oh, it's really, it is.
Yeah, it's called Why I Hate the Sun by Gladys Knight.
Oh, my goodness.
Gladys Knight. Okay.
Glad it's night.
Okay, stop reading and just listen right now.
Yes. Stop reading because, wait, what are they doing?
Stop reading. Listen.
Stop reading, and hopefully they're listening because we have another great episode coming up.
And this morning we are talking with Sherry Iverson, the executive director of the Idaho Chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics, which is a mouthful, but there's even more to talk about with Sherry Iverson. Good morning, Sherry.
And
Good morning.
she's on the board of directors for the Idaho Children's Trust Fund.
I've heard that name before.
Idaho Children's Trust Fund. Sherry, we were just talking before we started the recording about how our paths have crossed over the years. Ken interviewed you back. When was that, Ken?
Way back in the dark days of radio.
Back when you were on 106. That's
Yeah,
a
back when
long
I first
time.
started here in town, yeah.
Yeah, and then we've been in some different, I believe you trained something that I was involved in. But yes, so I've known you the entire time of my social work career. So very pleased to have you join us today for the Resilient Parenting Podcast. So thank you. So for those we shared a little bit, but can you tell us what you've done over your career?
And thank you for this invite. I started my career in actually labor and delivery room. So I, go back a long time. And when I think about how things go around in circles, I remember being in the nursery and, you looked at this baby that was kind of fussy and, you couldn't quite calm him. And we used to jokingly go, boy, I'm glad I'm not taking that one home. I mean, terrible that we would say that. And then, you did the normal, here's how to bathe and here's how to diaper. And we kind of sent new parents out. And, I look now and watch this full circle of where I am of retiring from St. Luke's and now working with all the pediatricians, and parenting is hard. And crying babies has got to be up there as like one of the toughest parts. And so, it's great to sort of be able to look at what are some tips to give parents and grandparents and caregivers so that we just don't sort of dump them into this role of parenting and hope that they survive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We just actually had our grandbabies visit us. And I don't know, we were all exhausted by the end, but it was like lovely. But it was like
They're 3 and 5.
they're 3 and 5. So every age brings its own unique challenges and opportunities. And, thinking about new babies, and I don't know, springtime always makes me think of babies and
Right.
and new beginnings. And so, you mentioned crying babies, and I know that the Idaho Children's Trust Fund, is this a program through them? Can you tell us a little bit about this
The
program?
crying baby plan.
Right, absolutely. Well, first, I think is April is, really a long time ago was looked at Child Abuse Prevention Month. And Ken, that's where you and I did lots of interviews of
Mm.
all these things that we were doing to just build awareness. And then I think that, the Children's Trust Fund and so many of our partners went, we need to go beyond just awareness,
Mhm.
because people don't just wake up in the morning and think that they're going to be abusive to their child.
Right.
We need to help parents cope. We need to build resilience. We need parents to have skills. And we always say children don't come with manuals. And
Oh.
parenting is the hardest job they ever have. And, we say those kind of like in jest, but man, it's true. And so over the years, I think that the Children's Trust Fund and St. Luke's and other organizations started to put together when are some of the most difficult times and what are skills we could give parents. So we chose crying. We know that crying, unfortunately, can be a trigger for abuse. The average newborn, we say they sleep 22 hours, but then they can cry 22 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And we laugh about the witching hour, at 5 o'clock. But man, that's such a difficult time that the baby's tired and mom or dad or grandparent or caregiver is exhausted and they've been up all day and that baby starts to cry. And I think we've all been to the wit's ends of saying, what am I going to do? And the crying plan is kind of this systematic way to help parents like do the normal. Are they wet? Are they tired? Are they hungry? That checklist that we all did,
Mhm.
we do for our grandkids. And then how do I calm this baby? And some babies have really specific little things that are triggers and work, and others you go through a whole list. But what's the list? And then most importantly is if it doesn't work, how do you calm yourself? How do you
Mhm.
tag team out to somebody? How do you put them down safely, regroup for 10 minutes and come back up and say, I can do this and take care of that baby again. So the crying plan we kind of developed as a checklist and a plan for parents and anybody who takes care of kids to just be able to go through the steps and feel comfortable and I'm not going to fall apart. I'm not going to lose it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Are there crying baby plan classes?
There really hasn't been. We have things online. The Children's Trust Fund has the plan online. We've done trainings for like childcare providers, and we know that some childcare providers actually they print the plan out. And when you sign your baby up for a childcare, they actually go through it and say what calms your baby, what soothes your baby. Do they like a pacifier? Is a swing something they like? And they start that dialogue with parents, and that's so important and really helps parents feel like they're in better control when they drop that baby off. I always say give it to grandparents, and then ask grandparents have some great ideas like, well, I pull out my guitar and I sing and this baby just goes to sleep. And a parent might never think about music, but music can be very calming. So it's a give or take interactive more than a class.
Yeah, I was just wondering why babies cry. Like we know like the main reason of like needing like food, comfort, maybe feeling uncomfortable with like their diaper, but there's some babies that they just won't stop.
Yeah.
So what are some reasons for that, just to start with the why, just for understanding? Because I have a feeling there's probably some parents out there going, what am I doing wrong, when it probably has nothing to do with them.
It usually has nothing to do with them. I always, we teach some parenting classes at St. Luke's, baby care basics. And so, yes, we do the crime plan in that. And I think we always say, think about how this baby was when you were pregnant and carrying them. They were never cold. They were never hot. They were never alone. They were always moving. They never were hungry. They didn't have stress. I mean, we do such a wonderful job of nurturing them for 9 months. And then, we kind of bring them into this world and, oh, no offense to parents, but we want to put them in a pair of jeans and a cowboy boots, I swear, when they're 2 weeks old. And we put them up in, different kinds of apparatuses and think they're going to want to swing or they're going to want to bounce. I think we forget that movement of air bothers babies. Overstimulation is a huge reason that babies cry. They're used to dark and quiet, and you bring them home to a family and dogs are barking and the TV's on really loud and everybody's in their face. And so part of that newborn is just their nervous system is trying to lay down over the dendrites to just get some calmness. And so trying to mimic as much as what it's like in the uterus. I always say, think about how much, and that's why swaddling works. That's why noise machines work that sound like mom's heart rate. That's why they go to sleep in the car, is because they're kind of confined and it's a little bit of that noise. And then as kids get older, as they're going through different milestones, their little immune systems and their nervous systems are very immature, and it takes a long time for them to really be able to cope with what we think about big emotions. And so when you think about that 1-year-old who just is angry and has no idea how to express that they really wanted the cookie and you gave them a potato chip, they freak out and they're on the floor, and those big emotions come out, and whether that's screaming or kicking or yelling. And I think that we just think, why are they overreacting? It was a potato chip. It's like, well, in their life, it was the biggest thing that happened in the last hour, and they just don't know how to tell you otherwise. They're not happy. So it really depends upon the age. The crying plan is kind of geared for that under 6 months, where we want parents to not shake, because unfortunately we sometimes, when babies cry, you just that shaking. We also don't want them to kind of throw them on the crib down hard. It's some of those things you don't intend to do, but sometimes when you do it, they quit crying for a second, and then no, you don't want that. That's the behavior. Like, oh, well, if I really shake them, this works.
Can I ask something about that? Can you explain why that is so dangerous for babies? I mean, obviously, we want to be gentle anyway, but there's reasons specifically for newborns why that can be so dangerous.
Absolutely. Well, when you first look at a little newborn, their heads are really big in proportion to the rest of their bodies. And we have some major blood vessels and major nerves that run in the back of their heads, and they don't have head control and support. And so any really strong, like shaking or throwing can actually damage both the blood vessels and the nerves. And so with what we think about as shaking, you can see blindness, which I think people don't have an idea at all. You can see real cerebral damage. You can see long-term disabilities, as you actually can rupture either the veins or the nerves there. And so, we always tell people to hold their heads, and parents do a good job, and it takes a tremendous amount of force. I don't want people to think that, jostling a little one around or moving it from one to another. But in anger, we sometimes don't understand how much force we could have if we are a big adult and it's a 5-pound baby, and you just pick that baby up without holding neck support and shake or throw. And in the literature, we've changed it to abusive head trauma, because I think shaking was led to that. If you didn't shake your baby, you could not cause any damage. And so it really is abusive head trauma. So it's not hitting the head. It's not throwing the baby down that there's a jostling of that head. It's really trying to protect that little head and that neck from any kind of damages when they're little.
Quick scenario. Okay, parents have their first baby. They're doing the crying baby plan. They're learning all this. Then another couple years or a year down the road, they end up with another baby. Do they automatically assume that they know how to care for this second baby like they did for the first one, or what do they need to do?
Well, I think we all assume that. We're like, we got
Yeah.
it, boy, we've had one. And then, your first one, like to be rocked, and your second one, you sit down to rock and they just fall apart on you. Babies are very unique and different. I just say, have a big, huge toolkit and think about all the things that you could do with Help a Crying Baby, and kind of go through them and find out which works. Your second one might like things very, very different. And the other thing is, Ken, is that we've changed in 2 or 3 years. So how you cope might be really different. When I tell parents, you've done everything, baby is full, they're not cold or wet, they're swaddled, place them in their crib that is safe, and go take a shower. And even if you need to, set your alarm for 6 minutes. And new parents were like, I can't do that. 6 minutes? No way, I can't do that. And frequently when they come back in 6 minutes, whether the baby's gone to sleep or they come back refreshed and ready to pick this baby up and try again. I think second and third time moms go, can I do this for 10 minutes? And I think we also need to recognize in our community, we have some really isolated families. You know, they move here, they don't know anybody, they don't know who to call, they don't feel like they can ask for help. I mean, how do you go someplace and say, man, my baby cries every night from 5 to 6 or 7, and I can't get dinner done, I'm just exhausted. And I think we found during COVID, when we really started to talk a lot about who can you call and ask and be comfortable enough to say, could you come over at 5 o'clock and just hold this baby for 30 minutes so I could get dinner on the table? And really prevent actually abuse for any child in that family. You know, maybe it's the 3-year-old that's really going to be the trigger, but the baby's the one that's crying.
Absolutely. I am wondering, for those that are not the new parents, but are loving the family or neighbors, or like, what would be some things that you would say to them would be helpful for them in terms of what could be supportive?
Great question. If you're really close and as grandparents, you kind of need a little trigger word, right? You know, we all reach our point like, wah! And so, you know, if your daughter or son called and said hippopotamus, that might be the word that you guys go, we're on our way, right? We're going to come in and we're going to pick up food on the way, and you're going to take one kid and you're going to take the other kid, and we say, go take a walk. Just that moment of getting out of the circumstance. And so that takes a real trusting. But I had a good colleague, and she used to tell her husband she was going to call, and if she said, I'm putting the child in the trash can, he knew that was the trigger, because she had 6 kids and didn't matter which one, but it's just like, I can't do this. And he would tell people at work, I need to go home. But things that when we think about what we need as adults, frequently as a parent, you're just overwhelmed and like, you haven't showered or you haven't been able to go get your hair cut. Give them an hour. Jokingly, people say, I don't even have any privacy. Have you remembered 1 and 2-year-olds all in the bathroom and you can't even shower or go to the bathroom? So I think as family and friends, can you bring a food? Can you put clean sheets on the bed? Can you give them 30 minutes out? Can you just hold the baby while they do other things? And, it's very interesting. As definitely grandparents, you have such an important role. They watch how you comfort a baby, and all of a sudden they're like, I never thought about that. I carried my little grandbaby in a football hold, and I watched my daughter going, he's kind of upside down in a football hold. What are you doing? And yet he was very calming, and she had never thought about turning him out and kind of holding him like a football. And so you have lots of wisdom, and we don't want parents to ever think that they're not doing a good job, but how do we support them? Because it's hard.
It is really hard. And I'm thinking about, expectations and, as for 9 months, you're thinking about what what kind of parent you're going to be and connecting with the baby. And when the baby's crying and you can't, for many reasons, can't seem to stop them from crying, like how parents can internalize that as like that they're not a good parent or there's something wrong with them. I'm thinking specifically also about like babies that have colic, and there's so many, like being able to connect with their baby and bond, how important that is. I just wonder if you can just talk to those parents who are struggling. I remember, I'll just be honest, I found out from my mom that I was a colicky baby and she had trouble soothing me. And knowing what I know now, I'm guessing that she probably was also very stressed. And so we were feeding off each other as well. So just, you know, and feeling bad. She was like talking about how she was just covered in sweat, trying to like find the right position to make me happy. And just, yeah, what do you say to those parents that are struggling right now?
Oh, my heart goes out to them because they are struggling. Um, you mentioned something I think is really important is milestones and normal growth and development. I think one of the first things that parents can really do is arm themselves is know what to expect of your newborn or your 6 month old or your toddler and not put expectations of what they can't do. Because, you know, when we expect them to be able to do something and then they can't, then it's like, what did we do wrong? So
Mhm.
I you know, a resource we tell parents all the time is healthychildren.org, which is a wonderful website by the American Academy of Pediatrics. And boy, every time your child goes through another milestones, know what they're supposed to do. Like, what's their normal sleep and how much sleep do they need? That
Mhm.
knowledge is a tool. Know how long are naps. Know when they wake up in their sleep cycles. So you're like, oh, that's what that is. What if I could go in and put a pacifier in Pat and not pick them up and think they're hungry? So I think knowledge is really important as one of those milestones. I then think you need to understand is that babies in NI are at higher risk of being a little bit fussy and coming home and crying. So those parents need extra. Any child that's got any medical conditions or overwhelming kinds of things need more care. So we can sort of identify. And then I think we've reached the point in the world we're able to say that, you know what, moms experience postpartum depression. And for many of those moms, they don't have the coping skills. And so, yes, really helping that mom is probably more important than that baby. You know, how do you help her? So I think there's some circumstances that we can identify. And I think, boy, it's hard to tell my new parents, but just ask for help. There's
Mhm.
somebody out there that really, really
Mhm.
is there to help. And it might be your church group, it might be your neighbor. Call your book club. You know, even if you quit work for 8 weeks, call somebody at work. Somebody is going to be able to go. And it's like having that conversation. I just need some help for a little bit.
Yeah.
So let's say parents have their baby at St. Luke's or somewhere. Is there this information being passed on to them right off the bat for the connections, like for the crying baby plan and all that?
Right. Right. So, you know, in childbirth classes, which we encourage people to take, you know, I think you learn, sure, you learn how to hee-hoo. I mean, all those little crazy breathing things that we all learn. But the last class usually is what is a newborn like and how to help them. And then some of the crying plan is in. They teach, I think, almost in every hospital around the state, baby care basics, which this is included in that baby care basics components. There's some great books that you can get about just the normalcy of newborns. And then the Children's Trust Fund and their website has got lots of information about way to soothe babies and crying and how to help yourself. So it's pretty available. You just have to kind of reach out.
Wonderful. So, you had mentioned like to try to create a toolbox of lots of different ideas and things that you can try because every child's different. Even if you have the same child, what worked one night may not work the next
Mhm.
night. So, can you share just like some of your go-tos that are some things that maybe families can try right away?
Sure. Well, swaddling's got to be up there at the top. You
Okay.
know, babies have a startle reflex. And when you walk past the crib when they're little and you hit the crib, their arms go out, their legs go
Mm,
out, their eyes go up. It's startling and it's very, very uncalming, if that's a word for them. And so, what swaddling does is really mimic the uterus and it brings those arms and legs close to the center and it reduces that swaddling so that, and somebody walks past the bassinet or something, that swaddle does not trigger them. And for some babies, I always say there are babies that are like smoke detectors. You know, when you burn in your toast, there's those smoke detectors that just beep and are kind of annoyance. And then there's that smoke detector in your house that goes off the minute your toaster goes off. Well, babies are the same way. You know, you might have that baby that just kind of and squeaks when they go back. And then I don't know if you had a fire alarm baby, but boy, some parents get them. So swaddling, you know, and we recommend that if you can swaddle in a blanket tight, you can continue to swaddle until they roll over. But what many parents find is they're just not as good at swaddling as those nurses in the newborn nursery are and making burrito babies. there's just really great swaddling sacks, and they're Velcro, and they're so easy. And you just put those little ones in and swaddle them in with the Velcro, and that works real well. Babies like the top of their heads touched and covered. One of those things a lot of people don't know about. So actually, a little teeny light head. If you remember, in the uterus, their head was touched by something all the time.
Mm.
So that's kind of funny. I kind of go down. They obviously sucking. They like to suck, and some babies will do thumb or finger or pacifier. There's lots of different things about sucking. I think when you come down to white noise, whether you do the recording of the ocean, or you like the heartbeat, or you just have the wind, babies like noise. There's important that it's not really too loud. And it's important that it's not within 5 feet of where they are. But many parents are surprised that when they take them into the bathroom and shower, that they go to sleep. It's because of the shower noise. So put them safe, even if it's a blanket on the floor, and go take a shower. You're de-stressing yourself, and baby is listening to nice, smooth. Temperature is important, not too hot, but not too cold. I think we sometimes overheat babies, and they can't throw off the blanket. So we need to think about temperature. Some babies really like the sound of voice. It's like there's nothing better. And so it's just like, pick up a book and read. They don't care if you're reading the newspaper or,
Okay.
or whatever you're reading. It's that voice. And there's the difference in the voice where we want to get babies excited. We all use that little, but remember, trying to like be monotonous and calming and rocking. I've had parents tell me that they've stood and put their baby on top of the dryer and turned it on and held them on the dryer so it rocked a little bit. Parents are creative.
Lovely.
But it is. And you probably had a thing that, did you rock? And then I always say, make sure it works with you. So if you want to sit in a rocker and rock, do that. If you want to pace the floor, but I always tell parents, if you decide that you're going to cope them only in the car seat, in the car, guess what happens at 3:00 in the morning when you can't get them to sleep? You're in the car, in the car seat. And I was like, I can't do that. I can't drive at 3:00 in the morning around the block. So, it's a give or take. Yeah.
Those are also wonderful ideas. Thank you so much. I think, you've given a lot of really good tools already, and then they can go, everything that we talked about today will be in the show notes, so they can access the crying plan, and then healthychildren.org. I'll add that as well. Really, really appreciate your time. It's a very important topic. And for the parents that are listening, what would be your final thing for them to say to them?
I would be terribly remiss if I didn't say probably one of your greatest experts is pediatricians. I mean, I spend my days every day with the pediatricians in this state. And having a doctor you can talk to and having a doctor you can be honest to is so important. And I always say about pediatricians, they'll get you through croup, they'll get you through colic, they'll get you through the being up the nose that they all do, and they'll get you through teenage terrible years. They're experts. They're experts in child development. They're years and years of experience, and a lot of them are parents. And so whether it's your pediatrician or there's amazing family docs that have got the same skill sets, start there, build a great relationship, ask great questions. You're not alone. And for many of the physicians in the state, they have great resources in their community. They have nurses who are experts. Some of them have lactation consultants, some have care coordinators. There's a big team called Helping Professionals. It's hard, but if you ask, it does make a difference.
Absolutely. So that could be I'm assuming part of the crying plan is like identifying all of your people who's on your team. And I think, something that you said is you're not alone in this. And I think, when you're tired and you're frustrated and you're disappointed for so many different things, things may come up for you, like just recognizing that that you're not alone in this, and that there's many parents that experience this as well. Um,
Never be afraid to ask for help.
yeah, and I do think that there probably is some that are afraid to ask for help because they figure that feel like, why can't I do this? So many other people do this, but this is part of parenting. That's why they say it's not easy.
Right. And, for every parent who says, why can't I get my baby to be calm and not cry? There's a parent of an 8-year-old goes, I can't get my kid to eat vegetables. And you might be awesome. Your kid might eat 1,000 vegetables a day. And we all have different skill sets, and kids are different. And so, don't take it so personally, each kind of challenge, because, they're kids who just are going to challenge us no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's parenting is definitely an adventure.
That is, and as a new grandmother, it's way too fun to be on the ride in that role too. I think that there's something about grandparents and aunts and uncles that, years ago we all were in one little community, and many other cultures we all are, and we're really distanced now. So even whether it's Zoom, I get on Zoom and have a conversation with my 3-year-old grandson, and we have snack together, and mom can take off and we talk, and he teaches me dinosaurs. And I have dinosaurs. So I bring him up and go, what's this one? And he tells me which one it is. But even that 15 minutes of us talking by Zoom and letting her go put a load of laundry in, and we build a relationship and we have a snack together. So you can be really creative in how you help.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Now I want to play with dinosaurs and have a snack.
I have a whole little bag, thanks to a 3-year-old who loves dinosaurs.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you so much for your time. This has been really helpful. And thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Good to chat with you again, Sherry.
It was great connecting with you guys. And this is so important. Thanks for sharing the word.
Absolutely.
This podcast is brought to you by the Idaho Children's Trust Fund.